assets, and their use within your organisation throughout their life cycle. It's an opportunity to manage risk, reduce costs, and deliver operational optimization. If we move on to the next slide. So, in general, software accounts for nearly a fifth of the IT budget, and many organisations are spending too much on purchasing and supporting software. Now, many companies do not have the ability to track what software they have, what's used, or what liabilities they can face. And if you don't know, it's near impossible to calculate and prove that the right licensing models are being used. Now, are you guys audit ready? Now, Gartner finds that the software vendors are still increasing the number and frequency of audits, and so it's not a case of whether or not you guys are going to be audited. You basically have a 68% chance of being audited by at least one software vendor within the next 12 months. Now, licensing agreements are complicated and vary from vendor to vendor, along with different rules on BYOD and virtualized devices, etc. The metrics and calculations are often way too difficult to manage manually. Now, users expect an experience in the workplace that mirrors their personal one, and downloading, using apps within minutes, not days or weeks. Despite a slow upturn in the economy, the recession has taught companies to keep a tight control on their budgets, and they expect every department, including IT, to achieve more with less. There's a growing focus on ensuring that they're buying the right licenses at the right time for the right price. And more IT purchasing is taking place beyond the control of internal IT. Other departments are sourcing IT directly, such as SaaS, cloud, and mobile. So without further ado, I will move on to the demo and let you guys actually see what the product can do.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I'll just come out of the PowerPoint. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see my screen at the moment. I'll just get some confirmation that you can see a snowboard.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you very much. So I just want to introduce Snow for those who haven't seen it, and just give you a little bit of background of what it is and what it does, and how it can enable you as a business to manage your compliance and your software asset management. And you'll notice I've highlighted them into 2 different buckets, because software asset management doesn't necessarily mean that you're managing applications that require a license. It's asset management of your software, all software. And what Snow does, as you can see straight away, I've got a customizable snowboard here, which I can define based on my user role or profile. So what that means is that if I'm logging in as an IT person, I may be given the responsibility of compliance, but I may not want to manage it, and I may care more about PCs that are running out of hard drive space, or virtual machines that are being spun up, or something along those lines. So I can very easily customize a specific board. So you can see I've got one here which demonstrates my software license optimization in whole, with a few other hardware-specific ones. But if I wanted to add some more, what I can do is I can easily just go into this, add another widget if I wanted to. Let's say if I wanted, I don't know, all of my agreements to find out when they're coming in. I can just quickly add that, and it's going to appear down here really quickly, really easily. The main thing to be aware is when you get hold of a system like this is the fact that it's going to change the way you deal with software asset management day in, day out. Because at the moment, most businesses deal in a reactive manner. And what that means is they wait for an audit, or they wait for a problem to arise, and then they start tackling it. What Snow does is it enables you to be able to see what your position is from compliance, as we can see here, our inventory status, the known and unknown of our inventory out there, and so we're on top of it day in, day out. So if I walk you through just this first section here, which I'm highlighting, when you take on Snow, you have the ability to connect it to your Active Directory and also your virtual hypervisors, so VMware, Hyper-V, Zen, whatever they may be. And Snow's going to go away and say, right, do you know what? You've installed the Snow agent, or we're taking data from another feed, such as SCCM or one of the other inventory sources that are out there, and I'll talk about the differences between those inventory sources and Snow's own inventory source. but it will then cross-reference to tell you that you have, I don't know, 5,000 PCs in your network, but out of those 5,000 PCs, maybe 100 of them aren't being inventoried. So you've got an extra 100 in Active Directory, which are not in Snow, or don't have any inventory solution on them at all. So you could have some issues in your business that you're not even aware of. This normally happens when you're looking at this specific one, virtual machines. A lot of people love the new virtual technologies and can spin up servers, every second you can get one spun up in a matter of minutes with a full SQL installation and, from a gold image. It's really quick to spin up. It's fantastic for IT departments to be resourceful, but the unfortunate thing is licensing comes second quite often when we're trying to enable our users or our customers for the resources they need. Now, what Snow does, on top of that, let alone being able to present that, if I wanted to see any of this information, I can go straight into that report. So anything you can see, you can click. And I can see straight away which virtual machines are connected to which host, what their name is, what their current status is, and the last time they scanned. And I can start seeing all of this information, which is incredibly important. And again, I can click into any of those if I want. Now, I'm just going to run you through a couple of things that Snow does for us, and that's something we've got backed throughout the solution. It's what's made Snow the #1 software asset management solution globally, and that's our SRS, and that stands for Software Recognition Service. When you're analyzing inventory, you will get back a whole bunch of different names for software. You will get Visio will come back 10 times, and that's not just from the version of the editions. You could see Visio 2003 Prof, Visio 2003 Professional, and lots of variations of the same name. And we do something which is known as software normalization. It's all part of the SRS, but we do that from the inventory point and also the entitlement point. So that means that you end up having a unique source of true data, which I'll walk you through in a second. But if I click on this warning here, what this starts off with is a very interesting thing. We're talking about SAM. I can see here that Snow has automatically blacklisted some applications for me. So we go away and work out what software is a game, what software is file sharing, or what software is malware, what software is a backup or antivirus, and we categorize them all for you, and that's part of the SRS. But the important thing to understand is, if I go into this game and have a look at BVS Solitaire Collection, now I don't care about that. It's not, I don't deem it as a risk to my business, but there's a lot of things that we need to be aware of. The first thing is that we have one installation. So straight away we can see it's installed, but we can also see the users. So I can see that I've got people actively using it. Now our agent will automatically track metering and usage for every single application that's out there. And that's important when you're trying to manage things like policies, procedures, process, and things like that. So I can see that it's on computer 1660. It's in the IT department, no surprise. And it was last used on the 16th, one time for 1 minute. Now, that's important to understand that we have that level of detail, and I'll go through why that's important when we look at reharvesting later. But the really important piece is this bit up here, where it says that we're... Someone's phone? Andy Jones? Thank you. So one of the things that we can point out here is that the compliance on this red box is telling me that I'm -1 compliant for a game. Now, as a business, you're responsible for the compliance of every application that is deployed on every device within your business. Now, it starts to get a bit scary when you start looking at iTunes and music installed on devices and copyright usage and then applications that you've got deployed. It can get a bit of a worry when you realize that. So what we can do is we can just click straight into one of these devices. So let's say this computer. I can see it's a laptop. I can see it's got 44 applications. It's got 3 users, so it's actually a shared device. And the total cost of ownership of this device is $1,700. So it's possibly the most expensive laptop I've ever seen. And I'll explain that in a minute. Now, if I scroll through, what we can see is we've got a few other blacklisted. I've blacklisted some iTunes there as well. I haven't blacklisted a few things I should do. I see Spotify's on there as well, risks around bandwidth. But what I need to know is not just that these are there. I need to know who's logging onto this device. Now, I need to know who's logging onto a device because I may need to manage things like named user licenses, and this is why we do it. But from a security perspective, I need to know who else has been accessing this box and what they've been doing. So I can see Samuel Jenkins is logging on with this user, which is great, and Carter. So we've got, it's probably a shared laptop. But I can also see Samuel Jenkins is also logging in using his admin account. He's only logged in once, so that's great. He's logged in once. But most likely, let's have a look. We can see that, yep, he logged in with that account and installed that game. Has run it once for 1 minute. So I can see that he was the culprit of the installation and the running of that software. And I can go and have a strong word with that gentleman to make sure he doesn't do it again. And what I can also start to see is a lot more information of all of these applications if I wanted to. Just to walk through some of these tabs, I just want to point out this tab here, the financial information, because what this shows me is that this computer is, it's a laptop, the price of the physical hardware, but also this bit here is the total cost of the application. So I can see I've got WinZip on there, which is £8. I've got Windows 8 Enterprise. I've got Office 2007 Professional. They start adding up to the costs of your devices. So I'm going to get a total cost of ownership per device. Now, a lot of businesses will turn around to me and say, I would love to be able to have a total cost of ownership per department, per region, per site. It's just not possible. I can't quantify it. What Snow does, because we're able to import all of your pricing, all of your licenses, how much you're paying for your hardware and your software, we'll automatically be able to bring something along those lines. And if you see here, I've got a cross-charging piece. These are all default reports that you get out of the box inside Snow. What we can see here is that I've got my business area in support. So support are running, 3 PCs, so Bruce, Raymond, and Jimmy. Their total cost of ownership just for support is about £5,000 worth of hardware and software. So we can start saying, look, who's the most expensive department in the world that we have today? Most likely marketing with Adobe and Creative Suite and things like that. And the next step is find. I know what my total cost of ownership is as a business, and I can see that I've actually got £1 million worth of assets here. I can then start looking at what of those assets are actually optimized. So which of them are being used and which of them are not being used. And that's really important when I start to do cost optimization, or as per Gartner's new phrase, SLOE, S-L-O-E, license optimization, which basically means I can look at all my licenses I have in my business which are being or not being utilized. So let's take a small step back and just do a bit of a review. I started off at the snowboard and I saw an alert which was a blacklisted application. This proactively told me to go into a device and start looking into it. From there, I started analyzing some of the licensing, the impact, security, and also the cost of ownership for that device. And I was able to do all of that by a single click and a follow-through within my system. This really empowers your users because they need to have a really quick, easy interface to be able to manage with this massively complex information. I haven't even started on the complex licensing stuff yet. Before I move on to demonstrating a little bit more around the SRS and the recognition and application register, is there any questions at this stage from anybody on the call? Okay, I see Matthew talking, and I can hear a little bit of background noise, but I can't actually hear a question. Okay, let me just check the chat, see if there's anything in there. No. Okay, in that case, I'll continue. If I go to having a look at one thing really interesting here, this is my 379 applications that I have. Now, I have lots of applications, way more than 379, but straight away I can see that I've got 379 applications in my business that require licenses and they're not being used. What's really important to understand, the pretty basic one I've got up here is WinZip 15. I've got 256 installations. Most people have WinZip installed. No one's using it, 23 usage, so 91% is not being used. That's actually about £1,800 worth of software not being used. What I can actually do is sort this, and straight away I can start to see what is the most expensive software that I've got out there, which is actively not being used. the most obvious is when we start looking at things like Visio and Project, we'll straight away get some application out there which are not being used at all. So let's have a look at what we can do with this data. I'm going to go to my application overview. So most businesses don't even have this level of ability today. And what I'd ask them as a business is, do you have a vendor risk register? Most people won't know what that means, but what that means is, do you have a list of your top priority vendors out there which you deem as a risk, either from a compliance perspective, security perspective, financial risk perspective, or audit perspective? These are all different levels of risk to your business. Do you have that? Well, what Snow will be able to do is enable you to have that function, which is part of your high-level ITIL and your ISO standards that you need to achieve to be able to identify your high-risk assets. We can see straight away that I've identified my top assets as Microsoft and Adobe. What I can do very quickly, and this is the dynamic reporting that we have in Snow, I can just grab in a new column and I can just create an instant pivot chart that will say, right, I want to see how much of my software is out there based on the compliance levels or the physical value that I have. Now, 2 seconds. Apologies. Let's do that again. Let's drag that over to the left. There we go. Talking too much, things are frozen. So what we can see here is that I've got Microsoft Corporation. I can see where I'm compliant. I can see where I'm over-licensed, and I can see where I'm under-licensed. Straight away, I could go, right, well, where am I under-licensed? Well, I'm under-licensed on my Visio Professional. I've got 8 installations. I've got 1 user. That's not very good. I need 8 licenses. I've transferred 7, which I'll talk you through in a minute, and I'm -1 compliant. So, I have a risk here, an application cost, which is very interesting to start addressing. I may also want to look at where I'm over-licensed, so I can see I'm over-licensed on some other applications, or maybe even look at a different vendor. So it's really quick, really easy. And at any point, if I want to pick one of these, I can just click and it will take me straight to that application. The second point is when you're doing software asset management comes into twofold. First of all, we need to be aware of all of the applications that we have out in our business that do or do not require a license. Now, Snow has over 350,000 applications within its software recognition service library. We give you that peace of mind where you can say, right, I've got 1,149 applications. So that's rationalized, normalized applications. So I already know I don't have to go through working out duplications because Snow's done that for me, which is great. I want to know which of those are my top risk based on audit or compliance. So I can just change this tab here to license required equals yes, which basically means I've turned it from 1,000 to 538 items. I mean, that's still quite a lot to start managing. If I want to know which of those are really expensive or bundle software, I can do that really quickly, easily. And now I have 49 different bundles. You can see I've got a lot of different variations of Adobe here, which is really interesting because I need to understand more about those. I'm just going to turn off this one. What I might want to do is then sort it by the total installations. And I can see I've got Semantic, Antivirus, Word, Excel. These are my top installations. I would expect them to be my top. I wouldn't really want WinZip to be higher than some of my ones below here. But if I grab my column selector, I also want to do something which is quite new in the industry and people are trying to do, but it's incredibly difficult at this stage. And that's the ability to go to my system and work out which software is required as part of a type. So how much antivirus software do I have out there? Or maybe even have the ability to go into my system and say, out of my environment, how much software do I have, how many devices do I have without antivirus installed? And we can see straight away that I've actually got 214 computers out in my environment that don't have antivirus. And what I'll probably find is if I do a query, I can probably find out, do I have more than one type of antivirus? Okay, let's have a look. I actually have, based on the fact that it's license required equals yes, and antivirus is here, I actually have multiple different types of antivirus, which is very interesting because I could then go back to my business and say, well, we want to standardize on Semantic AV10 rather than 8. I've got some 15 out there as well, which is a newer version, but maybe that's not our standard, so people are testing it. I've also got endpoint protection, etc., etc. I could be paying warranties, agreements, contracts, and all of this software without actually optimizing it in any way. So the ability to do application rationalization is a key function that you guys would need to be able to do in your day-to-day world to optimize your positions. And what I'm demonstrating is how quick, how easy you can do this with Snow. So this is just a demonstration of the interface and some of the great features that our software recognition service brings to you. But I'm going to walk you through an example of managing licenses, and I'm going to pick Visio because it's nice and simple. We all understand Visio. And what we can see straight away is that it's done an easy search, so it's brought some extra ones in here because it's just a Visio wildcard search. What we can see, let's sort this by name. I've only got a couple of names and additions for Visio. It's not flooded with data. And again, that's due to the normalization. If I go into the Office 2003 Visio Professional, as we saw in our compliance report earlier, I have 8 installs and 1 user. Well, that's not very good. I've got a new user asking me today for another copy of Visio. They want Visio 2013 installed in their PC, and they've given me a business case for it. Now, there's a lot of things I need to justify in a business case. Now, first and foremost, Visio Professional is not really designed for the average user. It's designed for architects and IT people due to the fact that it's got extra functionality in it for those users. And my request is coming from marketing. I can see inside Snow, I've put some information here. Now, I put this in myself, saying that Visio Professional is in IT and engineering and software development. There's no marketing requirement here. But what's really interesting as well to see is the fact that, well, I don't have any licenses for Visio Professional, but I do have licenses for Visio Standard. I could install that. But what a lot of people do as well is they decide to install Visio Standard but buy licenses for Visio Professional, just in case they want to upgrade one day. Now, I don't know how many of you know or do or don't know, but Visio Professional does not downgrade to Visio Standard. Project Professional does not downgrade to Project Standard. There is loads of applications out there that do and don't allow upgrades and downgrades based on their versions and or editions. Now, Snow manages this for you as part of the rules, the manufacturer rules, to give you a clear guidance on what can go up and what can go down. Now, one of the really interesting things is here is the fact that I've got 8 installations, but I'm only -1 compliant. I don't actually have any licenses whatsoever for this version, this edition, or anything. But what I do have is 2010 Visio Professional. So I can see that Visio Professional has automatically downgraded from 2010 to 2003. And that's part of the allowance of that license which Snow has automatically managed. So I know how that's worked. That's great. I now need to work out if I'm going to buy another copy, do I need to buy 2 copies or do I need to buy 1 copy, or do I not need to buy any at all? So straight away I've gone to my computers and I can see which computers, where they are, how long they've used, and the duration. But I need to know a little bit more than that. I need to understand that if they've been installed yesterday, I need to understand the total duration they've been used, not just for the last metering period. And if there's more than 1 user using it on that device, because that can have an impact as well. So Snow gives us all of that information, and I can easily export this if I wanted to, or I can run a report, or I can schedule a report to do this. But this gives me the ability to do something which is known in the industry as reharvesting, so taking a license from a PC and moving it somewhere else. Now, to be honest, there isn't that much difference between 2003, 2007, and 2010 Visio Professional today, so I'd rather utilize the licenses that I have spare. And more to the point, these have actually been downgraded, so why don't I install 2010 instead of 2003? I don't know, maybe it has better support or no idea. But you're getting the idea. You've got licenses out there which you could be using maybe in different versions or editions. Now, if I went back to my business today and said I've got 8 installations of Visio, well, actually it looks about 8, yeah, I could remove all of these and free up them and put them back into the pool. So the next time I get a request for Visio, we don't have to spend anything for it. The business doesn't care because that's just an install on a piece of software. Get on and do your job. if I turn around to them and said, I've got £4,000 worth of software not being used in our business today, and I can save the business £4,000 over the next fiscal year by optimizing our software procurement process, you're starting to get people's attention. You're using the right words, the right phrases, and you're talking about money, and that's what people care about. Now, so I can go back to my business and say, look, this is the current cost, 623 because I'm non-compliant. I can save this amount of money. Well, often at this point, a lot of people say to me, well, that's great, but I don't really want to go through every application. What I need is a business-level report that shows me every piece of software that I have that is not being used per department. Okay, that's a big ask, but what I can do, if I just go to my reports again, I'm actually just going to go to my Microsoft reports. Now, we have this for all of them, but it's really simple to show a per-vendor report. And everyone understands Microsoft. This is a report of cost of unused applications per computer per region. So what I can see here is that in my organizations that I have out there, if we look at China, I have a whole bunch of applications. Now, I haven't put any pricing in these, which is naughty, but I can see that I've got a whole bunch of computers, a whole bunch of users, and these are the applications they're not using. But let's just drill down and have a look at one of my other departments. So I can see at a global level, I've got £26,000 worth of software not being used, just in Microsoft. I can see in finance, they've got £3,000 worth. And I can see in IT in Denmark, they've got a whole bunch of applications not being used there into the equation of just under £3 grand. And what I can see is which application is not being used on what computer by what user. If I wanted to do the entire application spread, well, there we go. I've just changed it from Microsoft to my entire set. We can see WinZip is installed on Mark's computer and not being used. So we get the ability to do instant cost analysis against every single application across our business, per department, per user, per computer. And this is what software asset management looks like today. When we take software asset management from 5–10 years ago, this was not possible. It was just people were looking at, I've got an install and I need a license. That is not software asset management. You need to have understanding the financial, cost, risk, and optimization possibilities within inside your business. So again, I normally take a small pause at this phase because I've been talking a lot, and it's a lot of information, and this will be quite new to a lot of you. Is there any questions at this stage? I'll just check my chat screen, see if there's any that have been published, or if there's anyone that would like to vocally shout, please speak now.
Thank you, Lee. What I've done actually, I've muted the phones, so if I could request that people use the Q&A box on the top right of their WebEx screen. You can either use chat or Q&A, and we'll just check that now to see if there's any questions coming through.
Okay, so I've got a question from Stephen Ironmonger. Says, does it do baseline reporting? Now, my assumption, what that means is, like, how do you provide a Microsoft baseline for compliance? Is that the correct question that you're asking, Stephen? Excellent. So what the great thing about Snow is that we don't just do baseline reporting for Microsoft. Now, Microsoft actually use Snow, just so those of you who don't know, they've never used any other audit solution other than their own, which is SCCM and MAPS. But if I show you this here, if I go to my reports, and if I want a compliance position from Microsoft, I can just run off this specific compliance position, and straight away what it's going to do is it's going to provide me with all of the data that I need to be able to do that. Now, let me just remove these windows for a second. I can see all my software that's out there, how many installations, users, license requirement, and my available licenses, more importantly, my compliance position. Now, on top of that, quite often, Microsoft will ask, how did you get to that number? Okay, so how are you at -3, -4, or whatever? You have to show your workings sometimes. Now, if I drag in this one here, which shows deducted by simultaneous versions, or if I bring in things like secondary use rights or covered by data centers and clusters, we get a lot of different options that we can do today. And what that means is that we end up with the ability to demonstrate what license has been applied in what circumstance, based on the usage. Give me a second, my system's running a bit odd. 2 seconds. Let me just rerun that. Excellent. Let's just bring in simultaneous versions. Fantastic. Just going to sort by this. So we can see that the compliance is different on this one, which is 248, because actually I've deducted one license requirement because of simultaneous versions. I can then go into this application, which is Office 2007 standard, and I can see why and where this machine has been deducted, because it has 2 installations of the same software. Let me demonstrate. We have 2013 standard as a bundle and 2007 standard as a bundle. This bundle, even though we've only installed Outlook, covers the requirement for this bundle. So 100%. The great thing about this as well is I can instantly import my licenses. So we can see we have an import license function there. But we also have the ability to import what's known as a MLS, a Microsoft Licensing Statement. That's a standard function within Snow. We can just drag it in, and that would instantly create you a baseline report. When it comes to some of the more complex, let's talk around Oracle or SAP or IBM, Snow also has default reports that are submittable to your customers, to the vendors, such as an OSW. This is known as an Oracle Server Worksheet. This is the submittable form that Oracle needs. We also have, I'll just do one more as an example, because there's too many, but I'll use Autodesk. So we can see here I have Autodesk. From my knowledge, Snow is the only people, because we work with Autodesk to provide this, that can provide a submittable audit level report to Autodesk with all the fields they require in a single submittable form. Does that answer your questions, Steve? Is that okay? Let's just bring up the Q&A so I can see that.
Actually, while we wait for a response, we've just had a couple of other questions come in. Tell us a little bit about MSDN and how we manage the challenges around MSDN.
Yeah, fantastic. So MSDN is a fun one. You've got a couple of requirements for MSDN. The first and foremost is the ability to be able to identify which computers are in MSDN and which need to be and that they need to be ring fenced. So what we will often recommend is to create an OU. So you can see all these OUs that I have here, and you can see I've got a development one. These 2 machines are actually part of development, and they need to be managed in that way. So what we can do is we can start to see that I've got Visual Studio here, 2013 Ultimate with MSDN, which is under what's known as a named user license. So that user can use MSDN software on any PC, but those PCs do need to be ring-fenced. Microsoft require that. So you need to be able to identify which PC and which user is using the software within a development cycle. So I can see all of that. I can see the software that they're entitled to as part of their bundle, the software that's been installed as part of that entitlement bundle, when they're using it, and who's using it. So I can see if I wanted to work out what software is being allocated to which user, if I go to my MSDN builds, I can see that I have allocated a license to Eva Lewis. So this is my license tab now. So it's dynamically moved to it. And we can see that I've got this specific license associated to different users, and also you can see that it's managing the subscription level as well. So at this point, 2016, that MSDN subscription will expire, and it will notify me that these licenses are no longer, any new licenses cannot be installed, or you need to do something about it. Okay.
Thank you, Lee. Lee, a little bit, I suppose, around software recognition. What about in-house developed software?
Great question. So when you come to in-house developed software, there's quite a lot of software out there that customers invent, create, that can require a license. Maybe it talks to SQL, or it uses some form of CAL or something along those lines. Now, all of the bespoke software can be done via our recognition engine manually, if you wish. You can add applications to Snow, call it Flibble as an example, and you can say that it requires a license and it's tied to these executable and these variables. Your other option is actually to submit your entire bespoke applications via our support request system as an SRS update. Our SRS team will go away and it will look within your system, or at least your data from your system, and add them to the SRS for your customer level only. So it's you've got quite a few options, but yeah, we handle bespoke software just as well as we do standard commercial software.
Thank you, Lee. One next question. Do we populate the data, or does the scan pick up all the information it needs?
I'm not sure I quite understand that, but if I explain maybe a bit about the scanning technology, that'll answer it. We have a snow inventory agent, and we can take data from SCCM or whatever. Now, if we take data from SCCM, the data that is collected would be all of the hardware and all of the software, okay? That is on a person's PC. When we use our agent, it's going to bring back things like executables, registry keys. It will utilize PowerShell scripting. It will recognize applications that have been run via the web. So, for example, we can start to see web-based applications like Salesforce, ServiceNow, and things like that. And also, when we use our agent specifically, when we start looking at a computer, the hardware level information is directly from the BIOS. So we're not reliant on things like WMI, which is incredibly inaccurate. We use something called CPU-ID or CPU-Z, as you may know that. And we collect back all of the hardware and all of the software, file header, executable, path information that's required to do an accurate compliance position based on true level data. Often when we take data from other sources, while we will sanitize that and manage that, and provide you with better information than that tool does itself, because it will all be normalized, often tools out there struggle to recognize true additions and versions. Like, it may come through as Adobe Reader XI. Now, that's actually Adobe Reader XI Standard or Adobe Reader XI Pro. I don't know, because that data's come through from SCCM, and that SCCM failed to bring that addition and version through. What Snow will do is it ensure it grabs that version and addition to therefore be able to create a decent compliance position. Not sure if that answered your question, but it does follow on from something else that I was going to talk about.
I was just going to say, Lee, I think kind of how I read the question, these tables that we're looking at and the information that's in them, is this picked up automatically or is it manually populated?
Oh wow! Okay, this is automatically populated. The bit that's not automatically populated is if I go to the licenses here, all this data here where I've added licenses for per user and how to get the compliance. This isn't automatic. Obviously, it doesn't just go away and talk to your online portals and suck it in. There is an import process for your licensing. But for your inventory data, yeah, 100% that's automatic. Okay.
Thank you, Lee. Another question. Office 365.
Fantastic. So as you saw, I mentioned earlier, if I go to my administration section, I can go to the web-based applications and I can see I've got things like Office 365 already in there, Creative Cloud we're also doing as well. Now, Office 365 is made up of two different types of installation. There is the physical install that comes with 365. You physically install an executable and you run it from your device. You also have the ability to run Office directly via the web. So depending on what plan you've got and what subscription you have, that will be licensed differently and your access will be different. Now, we can manage all of that, which is great. So if we have a look at our Office 365, now this is our web-based access, we can see that, sorry, that's the wrong one. We can see that individuals actually have what's known as a named user license. So I can see that this computer, which is running 365 under the E3 plan, is being used by individuals. I think they're under this one here. There you go. Mark Fisher is actually the individual using those specific PCs against those specific boxes. So he's got multiple boxes, which is fine because obviously he's allowed that. What we do need to make sure is there isn't any abuse when it comes to 365. Office 365 can be mislicensed. People go, how? I've seen people create shared accounts where you'll create, I don't know, a support account, and you install it onto 5 support PCs. So they've all got Office, they've all got Outlook, they've got maybe connecting to a local exchange or even to a different server to manage the email, but everything else is being used. Now, that would be a breach of the license because you don't get 5 installs for that license. You can install up to 5 devices for that one user. What Snow is going to do is going to track where it is being used, who is loading it, and do you have a license for it. And as I said, on top of that, you can also tie that into the people who are just logging into the web-based platform as well and bringing that information directly back. There's a lot to Office 365, but we can manage the plans and both the inventory.
Thank you, Lee. Well, what about Outlook plugins? We have another question in that aspect as well.
So Outlook plugins are a bit fun. It depends on what you mean by that. Now, most Outlook plugins will have a form of executable as well, so they should come through. I don't often see those. Let me see if there's anything in my data for plugins. Probably not. But the short answer is that as long as it's got some form of executable, that will be found. And if it requires a license, that will also be found as well. Some plugins to applications, no, I don't think they're called plugins, but I think they're called extensions, actually. Some plugins or extensions to applications require something called Powershell scripting to actually identify and track. And if you know you've got them, we can utilize that to grab and display and show compliance if required. So there's quite a few Sage applications that require that as well. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Lee. No further questions.
Okay. There's a lot to Snow. I'm going to finish off on one last element, and I'll only take 5 minutes. The final point when you're managing applications, we've touched on the really basic stuff, okay? So we did desktop and software asset management. That's what this demo was about today. But just to be clear, Snow is an enterprise-level solution which can handle all levels of data center and clustering. So we can do Oracle, IBM, SAP. We can also manage all of your software asset management on your mobile devices. Okay, so you guys have got mobile phones out there today which need licenses for the applications they're running. I know that sounds a bit scary, but I'll show you that in a second. When I go to my data center, I am able to see what my data center is. So how many physical servers, how many processors, how many applications within my data center. But I also get that visibility. So I can see which in my data center, which servers have been spun up and which have not been tracked. And I showed you that from the alert at the start. So I can see, here's all my applications in my cluster. I can see there's whole bunches of SQL. I can see Office. I've got MSDN in there. I can physically see the layout of my servers. I can also see that my virtual machines, and I can see which virtual machine is sitting on which server. And I can see here that I've spun up an Oracle server within my VM, and I've put it into what's known as suspend mode, which is okay, apart from the fact that, well, you still need to license that server based on something known as software assurance, which enables you to have something called mobility. Now, I need that license if I've turned on functions like DRS, HA, or vMotion. So what you can see is Snow is actually going away and grabbing all of these functions and features and telling you which of your active clusters you have out there do you have these functions and features on and require licenses. So when you start applying your licenses, so you can see I'm just going to jump to my favorites here and I go to SQL Server Enterprise. I've actually applied what's known as a mobility coverage. So for my passive server, for this box here, which is 12684, what that has done is reduced the need for a license for that box. It's also reduced the need for a license for this box because that is sitting underneath that cluster. This is all automatic. We bring in the inventory, we bring in the cluster information from a feed, then we upload your licenses, align the licenses to that cluster, and then all of the downgrades will apply where it can to all of the subsequent SQL additions. This is massively complex things to do. You cannot do this unless you have a huge spreadsheet with multiple pivot charts. This is something that Snow provides to you as something that was known as our VMO option, so a virtualization option that you can have. It does require local installation of the to collect the data from vCenter or Hyper-V. It's not a very large installation, and for those of you who are interested in having Snow as hosted or locally installed, it is available in both flavors. But the VMO option will always require some form of connectivity to your virtual server. So I'm tempted to finish off on just a quick demo of Mobile SAM. Is that okay, Tony? Do you want to finish on Mobile SAM?
Thank you very much, and then we'll hand over to Michael to close it up.
Okay. So Mobile SAM may take a couple of moments, but just to think about when you have mobiles in your environment, you are responsible to manage the software that's installed on those devices as well. If I have a mobile phone, which is given to me by my business, which I do, and if I install, let's say, we use Salesforce, and let's say I put Facebook, and I put Truecaller on, and then I put, I don't know, say Salesforce Lite. Now, Salesforce Lite is actually not a Salesforce-recognized application, and it's actually developed by a market research company which goes away and collects all of my contacts and all of my data that's going through that app. Now, believe it or not, there's hundreds of apps that do out there, probably thousands of apps that do that today. I also need to be aware of, let's go to my level of mobile device level. If I go into, I don't know, let's pick a phone. This is an iPhone 6. I can see that I'm tracking all the applications that are on the iPhone. We're not breaching your user's profile, and I know a lot of you guys will have a BYOD policy for mobile phones, and they can connect it to Exchange. You should also have a security policy for those people who do connect their personal devices. I can see we've got Truecaller on here, which that could be doing using a lot of data. It could be a blacklisted application that we don't want in our business. Spotify could be sucking the bandwidth from our Wi-Fi's, no idea. I can see what Wi-Fi's those users are connected to. I can push out credentials to my mobiles. So our mobile SAM technology is also a full MDM solution. We actually class it as what's known as an EMM solution, but no one knows what that means when I say that. But most people understand what MDM is. So we can bring back all of the hardware level detail. Now, this generally doesn't affect licensing today, unless your screen size is over a certain size and you install Office 365 on it. So what we can do is, if we look at this mobile here, we can see that we've got Office 365 installed onto this, or Mobile Office, whatever they call it today. And that actually requires a license of some type somehow. Certain devices it's free for 1 year. Sometimes it's free if it's under 8 inches. There's lots of variances, and we can go into these applications and we can start to see, well, actually I'm non-compliant on a mobile phone app, which is pretty scary. If your users decide to root or jailbreak their devices, we can recognize that the fact they've done that, which is, again, a risk to your business, because if they're rooting, that means they're probably installing dodgy applications, maybe even pirate-level applications, on a corporate device, which you're then corporately responsible for. Do not underestimate SAM for mobile today. Businesses are replacing laptops with iPads and the equivalent, and they're also replacing all of their warehouses and their barcode scanners with Android-level scanners, which are communicating all the data directly to SQL or Oracle servers, which requires some form of CAL or multiplexing environment. As you now know, Snow is the only company today that offers you mobile SAM at this level with a full complement from MDM technology. So that finishes my demo today. That's a lot of SAM for most of you to understand and explain, and I'll hand back over.
Thanks very much, Lee. That's an absolutely superb demo of an excellent product. So I'll just finish off. I just want to reiterate, you know, the grey matter hosted service really helps you stay in control through effective SAM that stops organisations paying too much for their software. We can reduce your licensing costs, improve availability, and minimise compliance risks through the software asset management and license optimization. It's a hassle-free service provided by us here at Grey Matter. Ultimately, we'll help you guys sleep at night knowing that you're audit ready. So without further ado, if there are any questions.
Stephen, Lee, another question's just come through actually with regards to implementation. And Lee, just a rough timeline for say 100 devices.
Well, Snow gets installed physically in under a day. Implementation is pretty amazing because you have quite a few options. You can either go in a hosted platform style where an agent can just be deployed. So we provide what's known as an MSI, a standard Microsoft application installer, where you can just roll that out via group policy or PDQ or something, or if you've got SCCM. Once that agent's rolled out, it won't affect any computers, it won't reboot them or anything along those lines. That will be instantly reporting back to the server, and within 1 day you'll be fully up and running. So the short answer is incredibly quick. When it comes to implementation, the extended implementation, which is bringing in all your licenses, that can take a little bit longer, but that's done on a customer-by-customer basis because obviously it depends on the complexity of your licensing. But in short, if you have an MLS, that could probably be imported within 1 or 2 days as well. So very short timeline.
Thanks, Lee. Do we have any other questions? Perfect, no? There's nothing else coming through, so Stephen,
unless anybody's typing now, we'll just wait a few more seconds for any questions that are coming through. I'd just like to say, if anybody has any further questions, anything that pops up after this WebEx, then feel free to contact me directly. My number is 01364 655 156. Or you can email me at michaelh@greymatter.com. All of the details will have been on the email that you were sent initially. But like I say, feel free to reach out to me if anything pops up after the WebEx. I don't think we've got any more questions, Tony.
Perfect. Thank you very much, then.